there's a story that I love, and I can't remember who the author of the story was, but it was like a boy and a horse that were like stuck out in the forest. It was like terrible conditions, foggy, and the gentleman looks at his horse, and he's like, "I don't know where to go. I'm lost. Like, what do I do?" And he's like, "Can you see your first step?" He said, "Yes." "Take it." Then the next one. Then the next one.
This podcast is brought to you by Hey Taco, the only peer-to-peer recognition platform that uses tacos to help teams around the world share gratitude. I'm Doug.
I'm Una.
This is our podcast, Amazing Teams.
Hey everyone, welcome to season 3 of the Amazing Teams podcast, where we explore all things that make work better. Today, we are excited to be joined by Sanket Merchant, partner at Peakspan Capital. Sanket, welcome to the Amazing Teams podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a complete honor, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course.
Can you tell us more about yourself and what you do at Peakspan?
100%. I'm happy to. So I'll kind of break it down into two brief and hopefully succinct introductions, one to myself, one to our firm. So my name is Sanket Merchant. I'm a partner here at Peakspan Capital. And I now have had the privilege of working with growth stage software entrepreneurs for about 15 years, which I'm dating myself. I was hoping not to do that on this conversation, but anybody can check LinkedIn and see that. But it's been amazing. It's been amazing. I feel like, folks would always say like, love your job. And I feel incredibly fortunate to have found the career path that I did and to truly have fallen in love and to really enjoy what I do and to be, hopefully knock on wood, consistently good and getting better at it, which is amazing. But 15 years, I went to the University of Colorado Boulder, studied accounting, economics, and finance, came out to the Bay, got bitten by the technology bug, ended up starting my career in software, working on the operating side at a financial software company, got to manage a $10 million book of accounts effectively as an account manager, and got to work with private equity, venture capital, and growth equity firms, investment banks. Through that experience, this is actually kind of interesting. When I came to the Bay, there was no such thing as ride sharing, which is kind of crazy. So you go to a client meeting, and I'm sure Doug, and you might remember this as well, but you would go to a client meeting and you would leave and you would awkwardly stand outside because you had to call dispatch to get a yellow taxi cab to come pick you up. And that could have been 30 minutes. And so you'd awkwardly be sitting outside of an office. They're like checking in on you. How are you doing? You go, okay. But it's been amazing. And so I've been out here for the last 15 years. So spent the early part of my career doing software M&A, which effectively you're a glorified real estate broker. And instead of selling a house, you're helping a software company, typically between 10 to 50 million in revenue, anywhere between 100 to half a billion of enterprise value, decide what do we do next, right? What do we aspire to be when we grow up? Do we want to sell the business? Do we want to raise more capital? Do we want to do a little bit of both? And in 2016, I found my way to Peakspan. And there's an actually interesting story about one of the co-founders and managing partners here that goes to the crux of the topic of conversation that won me over, because investment banking is not notoriously known for having world-class cultures. And there's probably some stories over drinks that we can share there, but ended up joining Peakspan in 2016. I was one of the first non-founding hires at the time. We were 2 investments out of our first fund, which is a $150 million fund. And fast forward the clock, 9 years, we're on the precipice of Peakspan's 10th anniversary. We've now grown the portfolio from 2 to 55, the team from 4 to just shy of 30. Just under $2 billion of assets under management over the last decade. And I think we're on our way of hopefully, knock on wood, building a generational firm in emerging growth stage B2B software investing, which is really, really exciting. So that's my background. I work with over a dozen of our portfolio partners. I lead our education technology and cybersecurity and digital infrastructure practice. And then just by way of background really quickly on Peakspan, we're a US-based emerging growth stage investment firm. We're partnered with entrepreneurs in that journey from 3 to 10 million in revenue to 50 million plus. We've now had the privilege of working with 55 growth stage software companies. And one of the things that I'm incredibly proud of beyond the returns, because that gives us the opportunity to continue doing what we're doing, because we generate, if we generate great outcomes for our stakeholders, entrepreneurs, as well as limited partners, then we get the opportunity to play the game, right? But most importantly, what I'm proud of is a lot of folks talk about being founder friendly, and there's a lot of different flavors of ice cream out there when it comes to investors. We pride ourselves being really, really good at helping our entrepreneurs drive the best risk-adjusted outcome. What that means is, one is, our commitment to our entrepreneurs is that if you go with Peakspan, the outcome will be better. And number 2 is we think about each portfolio partner as if we had a portfolio of one. And so one of the stats I'm most proud of is that in 55 portfolio partnerships to date, we've only had one company fail. And so this team doesn't take losing lightly. We work our tails off to protect value for our businesses. And then importantly, try to be the best partner to helping them get to the best goal, whether that's 30, 50, 100 plus million in revenue. So yeah, that's us.
That's an incredible stat there. One failure out of how many? You said 55?
55.
That's quite a hit right there.
Knocking on wood. I'm hoping we can keep it there. So
Sanket, besides the interesting work, what has helped you at PeakSpan for 10 years across all these investments, growing the team? It must be something you guys are doing right on the culture front that you're still there.
yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, I think at the core, like I could talk a little bit about it from my work and I think what we've done from a people perspective, and then also organizationally. I think the biggest thing you realize is that, just like any organization, I think what makes Hey Taco so successful or businesses so successful is clarity across different dimensions, from your strategy to your mission to your customer to the product strategy, right? And so for us, we've been obsessed about, one is having clarity to our identity. Our aspiration is to be the best emerging growth stage B2B software investor out there. And like the thing that we wake up really inspired by every single day is, can we be the best single sport athletes in B2B software in the vertical markets that we cover at this specific stage of growth? And one of the early observations I had in my career was, observing this disproportionate value placed on specialization, right? Even for Hey Taco, you could say, hey, rewards and recognition and appreciation is a broad category. We want to do everything for everyone, or we can be really amazing at what we do, which is being able to provide really organic, authentic recognition in the flow of work, in the way that people organically want to do it. And we're going to be monsters at that, right? And so for us, we build amazing clarity in our mission to be the partner stories for growth stage entrepreneurs and teams. Number two is our customer. Who do we serve, right? Oftentimes it's first or second time entrepreneurs, folks that took on huge opportunity costs, not taking that lucrative job at a FANG company with the big generous RSU packages and the big cash comp, and said, I'm going to do this audacious thing, which is really explore this infatuation with a problem statement, right? And oftentimes making huge sacrifices with young families or with partners where they said, hey, listen, I'm not going to be making a lot of money. I'm not going to be taking out a paycheck. But I believe this thing is going to work out, right? And there was an analogy my partner had shared with me, which is when you go to like Vegas, there might be two perspectives that you have, right? And I think this was inspired by a son who was a much younger kid at the time, who's now like a sophomore or junior in college. But I've asked him, like, Dad, what if we took all of our net worth and went to the blackjack table or went to the roulette table and put it on black? There's two perspectives. One is there's a school of thought that says, oh my God, in a matter of minutes, I could double my net worth. That's incredible. That's exciting. There's the other portion that's like terrifying that I can lose everything in a matter of seconds. And so for our entrepreneurs, for folks who own 30 to 70% of their business and their entire life's worth is their life's work, and their team's hard effort is encaptured in that business, the appetite for failure is low. And so we are studied at supporting that entrepreneur. I think for us, it's taking a step back and understanding, for that entrepreneur, for that customer, what is the product that we want to deliver? And we can talk about blog posts and we can talk about, advisors and all these things, but ultimately comes down to what this customer cares deeply about, just like your customers at Hey Taco for any business, is an outcome. That outcome is, how do I optimize the best risk-adjusted outcome? How do you help me protect value in my business and help me execute to the best view of success? And we got really, really good at executing across those key dimensions. So I would say organizationally, that has been like, we have been very clear in our identity, very clear on our North Star. And I would say organizationally, like, I think, at the core of it, I talk about this after we make an investment. We built this kind of muscle around sharing back with the teams that we back, right? Sharing back for the leadership teams, the good, the bad, the uglies, the full 360. Like, what are we doing well? We want to do more of. What are the things that we don't do so well? We need to get better at. What are the things that could like really be an Achilles like tear, right? And sadly, shout out to Jason Tatum. I hope he gets better. But it is like the stuff you don't want happening, right? And as a part of that, we also leverage those opportunities to inspire a team, because at the end of the day, for a software company where you don't have a lot of balance sheet dependencies, in a world in which we are seeing the democratization of software, we're seeing, whether it's in terms of like how vibe coding and how software gets developed to how software gets hosted and delivered, right? The barriers to entry have gotten lower and lower and lower. I think differentiation becomes more, it becomes less material, I think, and it comes down to execution. Why is Workday, why are these iconic software franchises as successful as they are. Did anybody know that Workday on a quarterly basis generates $1 billion of net, no, maybe it's annual, $1 billion of net new ARR every year? Just think about that sheer volume. And it comes down to, do they have an amazing product? I think so, right? If you talk to their customers, I don't know, maybe they have a different opinion, but core product, great product, but importantly, flawless execution. They're monsters. All these companies are monsters of execution. And so at the core of it is people. And so I think for software companies, what I've noticed is their IP, their biggest competitive advantage of their human beings is that workforce. And for us, at the core of it, I could go and take a laptop and operate anywhere in the world at PeakSpan. And so for us, our competitive advantage is human beings mobilized around a clear purpose, a clear mission, a clear sense of identity and core values that allow us to bring the best out of each other, but importantly, put us in the best position to execute our mission, right? For our entrepreneurs and for our stakeholders. So I hope that was helpful.
That was helpful. And I loved how you described your organization around this unique identity, unique purpose, and serving your customers. Because I think a misconception is that you're sitting in your palatial office waiting, like people are coming to you and you're just kind of like writing checks, right? And I remember getting an email from you in our exchange and you had a little banner for a webinar. And I'm like, webinar? Like, why is PeakSpan doing webinars about optimizing landing page conversion, right? Or something that's so, I was like, that's interesting, by the way. I should probably go to that. But it highlights you're really there to support the entrepreneurs, the ones you back and the ones that you might back in the future, right? I presume that that's also how you find people that are interested in partnering with you guys.
100%. It's a fantastic point. And I also, for those that don't know, but some who may listen in and I one of the cool things about working for a younger company, you and I talked a lot about this in our prep call. The cool part is you get to wear a lot of hats, right? And I think when I joined PeakSpan, it was very entrepreneurial. I remember sitting in the office, I think it was my first day, and try not to open my mouth up too much to let everybody know it was my first day, or it might have been my first week at that point in time. But I was sitting down with, I think, the fourth wealthiest human being in China, where we had like 6 translators in the office, and it was an amazing experience. Like at that point in my career, I would have never had that experience. And I know a lot of my peers who went out to different firms doing the same thing would never have had that experience, right? And so I think, one of the things I by making that comment to you is I get to wear a marketing hat, and that's a cool thing. Like I get to think about, what are pain points for entrepreneurs, and how can we help solve them? And I think that's taking a step back philosophically. What you'll hear us talk about is portfolio partnerships, not portfolio companies, right? When you think about it, the triangle for PeakSpan has 3 points, and you actually look under our triangle, there's 3 dots. The 3 dots symbolize our 3 constituent groups and stakeholders that we serve: our team, our entrepreneurs, our limited partners. We do not forget the reason why we have the opportunity to do what we do every single day is because of these 3 constituent groups, right? And so we remind ourselves that at the end of the day, you earn your seat every single day. How you show up for your entrepreneurs, that is in good and bad situations. I was talking to another portfolio partner who's going through a bit of a moment of turbulence. I'll describe it as that. And I've said, character and partnership are defined in these challenging moments, and how you show up, your availability, the agility, the support, the selflessness, the grit. Like, that's where you build your reputation, not on, the $30 billion acquisitions that, result in a tombstone on your wall. And from my perspective, right? So,
Doug, that must resonate with you. You've definitely been through a lot of crazy things in almost 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of a roller coaster. Sanket, I'm curious. So you've had the opportunity to meet hundreds of leadership teams. What do you feel distinguishes the truly amazing ones from the rest?
it's a great question, and I think it's no different from. I think it's a broader question around high performing teams. Like, what do we know about high performing teams? And what's interesting is we're going to be putting out a blog post on culture and people come out soon, which is kind of timely, but I'll share that with you all when that goes live. But and we also had one of our offsites in November last year focused on culture, right, and scalability of our business, right. And I would say, like, it comes down to, from my perspective, when I reflect on our team and what we're trying to build, and then importantly, what I've seen across the entrepreneurial teams that we back. I actually wrote this down. I was like kind of thinking about this. And so I would come back to, first and foremost, is an intense culture around accountability, right? And, a huge sports fan, love my Denver Nuggets, sad how our season ended. Not the way I hoped for, but, I think it applies to sports teams, F1, it applies to, organizations. So I think an intense culture around accountability, it is, I'm in an empowered, I operate in an accountability world. Our entrepreneurial teams do. And so I think folks who don't make excuses, but kind of own up to things and understand, like, whether it's at an individual level, at an IC level, in terms of what you contribute to the broader goal and objective. I certainly have responsibilities here as a partner at our firm in terms of how we grow and develop our talent, how we think about strategy development, how do I think about my individual contributions to our overall portfolio, how we're doing to, like, help create value. So I think one is accountability. Second is a commitment to team. And I think these are all going to seem very generic, but I, you know, I use this in the context, and I'm kind of giving a little bit of sway because I it was going to go to the tacos piece of this because I know that's the end of it.
You can reuse it. You can reuse it. Don't worry about it.
But I think about it in the context of, like, even my home, right? And I tell my wife all the time, like, we're a team. And my father-in-law just went through a pretty onerous cardiac bypass surgery, and that's like it is. It's unfortunate that many people have to go through that. But it certainly doesn't diminish the gravity of that procedure and the fact that your heart's stopping for X minutes or hours, and it's a crazy thing. And it is. I've got a young family with twin boys that are turning 6 this summer, and you just show up. Right. And I think in that moment, I have to acknowledge that my wife wears a lot of different hats, and all those hats are equally important. That hat is being a wife, being a beautiful young woman, being an amazing professional, being a daughter, being a sibling. And in that moment, what was most important is the role she plays as a daughter. And a great teammate has the back of their colleague, their team members. Right. And so I think teams that have an orientation around commitment to one another, I think, is one built on empathy, care, and compassion. And I think that, I don't know of any organizations or sports franchises or relationships that have thrived on a philosophy of selfishness, personally. Maybe there are some out there, but I don't know that I can think
They
of
might
any.
have not thrived for too long, or maybe that's not a definition of thrive, right? You can kind of win a championship, but not build a
Yeah,
program on
that's exactly
selfishness,
right.
probably.
It's not an individual sport, right? And
Hmm.
even in that, if you look at it, and, like, one of the things that we talked about our culture offsite is, could we study teams that, like, the highest performing teams, and what do we know about those teams? I mean, think about this. For the longest period of time, Mercedes-Benz was the most successful F1 franchise. They had, six constructor cup championship, or eight. Lewis Hamilton was arguably the most historic, prolific F Formula One driver in the history of the sport. But what people don't acknowledge is, in order to have a 3-second pit stop, the volume of human beings that have to perfectly execute their role to allow him to have a 1 second advantage or half a second advantage, or the 1,800 people at HQ that work on aerodynamics or the engine or blah, 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 that I clearly am out of my depth. The fact I got this far is actually quite impressive. That, to me, I think, is really powerful. I think third, I think this is understated, and no one is perfect, right? When I think about, including building an amazing software company, it's really hard, as you both know. And you go through economic periods of existential crisis, whether it's inflation or whether it's economic slowdown, it's tariffs, it's a lot of things that are outside of your control, and or it's things that are just not working internally. And what I found is coachability is paramount. Right. I think about some of our team members, and I'm so inspired by the team that we've assembled here at Peakspan. But I also think about the team of portfolio partners, or the executive, the leadership teams that we've built. And these are maybe two intertwined points, but, humility and coachability, and acknowledging that I'm not perfect. I'm far from perfect. Right. And after every diligence process, I ask my founder, like, my leadership teams, like, what could I have done better? What could Peakspan have done better? Right. If I show up to a board meeting, what could I have done to make that session more productive? Right. I'm here to challenge you. I'm here to make you better. I'm here to roll up my sleeves, and I operate in this extension of your team. And I'm going to bring, hopefully, certain experiences and skill sets that are complementary to the franchise that we're building, but we want to build a winning franchise. That doesn't mean that I'm excused of any development areas. Right. And so I think for folks who show up, with, I think, the resolve, understanding, or, like, hey, because Sanket has a critique or a perspective that I disagree with, doesn't mean that that is aimed at me personally. He's not here to, like, hurt my feelings or to break me down or tear me down. but identifying a development area. And I think about, that for our team in terms of like us wanting to get better or, to your personal relationships, right? So I think coachability to me is amazing. And I think it allows you to take what would otherwise be difficult situations and make them frictionful and make them have them focus on the outcome. There's nothing that I gain criticizing a team member, or that I know that my colleagues or entrepreneurs gain in criticizing me. So I already go into that conversation assuming good intent and knowing that, with a bit of gratitude that someone who doesn't have really much to gain maybe from giving me some feedback, that they're willing to take the time, maybe approach what would feel like an uncomfortable conversation and share something with me. That shows me true care and compassion, right? Like, hey, I'm invested to make you better, right? So I would say that's the third thing here, and I'll tune up just like wrap it up. But transparency, I think I'm sure as you imagine your teams, right? It's just like share bad information fast, or good information fast, bad information even faster, and just know that like. So I think for me, it's just I think being open, honest, transparent, I think is always just key, and I think I think trust is it's hard to earn, it's easy to lose. And one thing I've shared, like, there was a point in my career where I felt like I hit, it's like the arena changed, right? It's like you went from playing indoor, like you're playing in Dallas, right? Under like a dome and perfect conditions, to going out to Green Bay in the middle of winter and playing on like snow. Just like, holy crap, this is different. And, I think the point being there is that like the things that were integral to me early on in my career might not have been the same skill set I needed to be successful long term, if that made sense. But one of the things I always coach junior team members is invest forward to build trust and to establish yourself as being somebody that is accountable, that's trustworthy, that's reliable. And you can ride the coattails of that hard work for a long time. That's how you build agency. Like if you think about your team and like, hey, when somebody says, I'm going to do something by XYZ time, there are certain people where like they're going to get it done. Like I just know they're going to crush it. They're going to do an amazing job at it. And I'm going to say, dude, whoever it is, guy, gal, go do what you need to do. I trust you and you're going to get it done. And other folks that you may say, hey, I don't have a great experience here and I need to micromanage it a little bit. And I think for entrepreneurial teams, I think it's just like, and for our team internally, like it's just an important quality, I think, trust in anything that you do. And the last thing I would just call out is agility. And I think about this, one of our operating advisors, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Andre Martin, exceptional human being. If there's someone I could speak like and have swagger like and be like him, he's amazing. Shout out Andre if you're listening to this or do listen to this, but exceptional human being. But he was the senior people HR leader at Mars, Nike, Yum Brands, Target, Google, like you just name it, like just iconic human being. Started his career as like a performance consultant or coach to sports teams. And, I think, one of the things that I've come to appreciate is, or, for me is moving quickly, being hyper responsive. Well, like, so actually I forgot the thought. The reason I mentioned what he said or mentioned him is because he has this perspective around there's no such thing as like work-life balance. Like that's a fallacy that people are trying to pursue. And whether you agree with that or not, I think it's a fair intellectual perspective to have. And I think what I have been committed to is work-life integration, if that makes sense. And anything that I do, approach it with agility and responsiveness, whether that is responding to an entrepreneur that is in a crisis situation and noting that I'm available 24/7. I generally mean that. Like you can ask any of my entrepreneurs, like you may not know where I'm at in the world at the time, but like being available to someone, showing someone that like whatever is their issue, or they send you an email, whatever it is that you respond quickly to it. That's like one. But I think more importantly is that like when there's a priority set, or we talk about an initiative, or we talk about something that's important, that we're mobilizing quickly to get stuff done. Right. And I think to me, we talk about this like time kills all deals, shelf life on certain things isn't really rich. Right. And I think the teams that are incredibly successful, I feel like just approach things with a level of intensity that is just insane. Right. And it's not this pursuit of perfection that can be, I think, immobilizing at times. but it is a humility to know, like, there's a story, and I realize I'm kind of using a lot of analogies that I probably shouldn't, but there's a story that I love, and I can't remember who the author of the story was, but it was like a boy and a horse that were like stuck out in the forest. And it was like terrible conditions, foggy, and the gentleman looks at his horse, and he's like, I don't know where to go. I'm lost. Like, what do I do? And he's like, can you see your first step? He said, yes, take it. Then the next one. Then the next one. And so I love this idea of, and there's another quote that I sent my team, which is, fear is nothing but, it's not an indictment on capability or capacity. It's an acknowledgement of inexperience. And you just got to do it. Right. And I think that's like one thing I want to impart on my kids, I think about, is being fearless. It doesn't mean being egotistical, but it's understanding that, like, um, in that moment, fear is just a reaction to something that is unknown. But if you approach things with agility in an operational kind of framework, okay, I don't know how to solve this problem. I've never seen this before, but I do know what I kind of need to solve for, which are these 5 things. And then how do I build an operational plan here? And how do I create a timeline to make sure that, like, I'm iterating, and then I know how to go to Una when I have this question, or I have to go to Doug with this question, or at least I can come with the framework and then get feedback so we can iterate to get things out. I think that's pretty amazing. And so I will just say, for me at Peakspan, whether it's thesis development, whether it's cool marketing initiatives, it is like, it's, you got to try it. You got to move. So I hope that was helpful. Sorry, I
That
apologize
was
that
very helpful. No. An analogy. We love analogies. We love stories. We all remember them.
I can't stop thinking and wondering if you have your 6-year-olds playing basketball yet.
I do. They've got sick jumpers. And it's the only sport that I feel like I've got any qualification to coach them on for the next couple of years. But it's amazing. I will tell you, they are absolute sponges. They've been watching every playoff series with me. And, the Nuggets lost. My wife was like, you've made them into diehard fans of the sport and of the Warriors and the Nuggets. And she's like, when they lost, she's like, this is also a good opportunity to teach them how to lose with grace too. And just accept that.
Absolutely.
But it's crazy how they like come in and from like literally 2-week series go and say, like, that's double dribble. That's a turnover. Come on, zone. And I'm like, whoa. But they're picking up so much from the commentary, and they're sponges. It's amazing.
It must
So.
make watching games extra fun with them.
Yeah, it is. It is. It was the moment that I realized, moment seeing them share my frustration with the Denver loss was the moment. I was like, oh, I didn't prepare for that piece of it. And so that was kind of, I started like, hey buddy, like, let's sit down. It was unfortunate, but blah, 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 blah. So, but they're really into it. They're enjoying it.
A follow-up question for you about
Yeah.
all these qualities of amazing teams. How important are those to you when you're doing your investment thesis and reviewing potential new investments? Like, when you're looking at the entrepreneurial team, do you run them through the gamut of, like, do they need these certain things?
It's a great question. I would say it's not as like structured in the sense of like, we have a checklist and are we seeing these things? I find that companies that we back that are innately successful have these common strands of DNA. Like, they are forged together by these shared kind of attributes. Some are stronger than others in different areas. But I also feel like, teams grow, right? And I think the identity of an organization will change over time, particularly as you build out the leadership team, as the company scales, and you focus less on building the business, you're building the company, which is if you go back to our masterclass series, there's a couple of we've got amazing advisors talk about how do you scale culture, how do you scale performance culture, how do you graduate from viable to valuable, which is actually an interesting delineation in the scale up journey. Like the number of companies that get to 10 versus 30 to 50, like there's a pretty big gap there, right? In terms of companies that have been successful kind of navigating that trough, right? And so I would say, like, it's not so hard and fast. I would say that you indirectly see those commonalities. I will say, when it comes to founder CEOs, there is, I think that's more important in terms of just like, here's going to be, the most significant and important collaborator day to day in terms of shepherding this business together to an amazing outcome. Do I feel like there is trust? Do I feel like there's the ability to constructively debate and discuss things, mutual respect? Do we operate with high integrity and all those things, right? Like, are we seeing those things? And so I I think probably at that level, it's if you don't have conviction in those things, and conversely, if you as a founder don't have conviction in your investor, that, hey, this is like, there's a post from one of our founders, and he said, not to be too self-complimentary, but like, hey, like, it's pretty amazing when you can find an investor that is your 4 a.m. buddy, kind of like a founder, where you feel like is an extension of your founding team. Like, that's where you feel like you're in a good spot. I also think that, for founders, for entrepreneurs, like, you should also be thinking about like, hey, we have a core set of values. Capital is a commodity to a certain extent, right? I think for great companies, access to capital is not a constraint, to be honest. I mean, there's $2.5 trillion of dry powder in private equity right now. So I think that's a great indication of that. And so, being, I think, judicious about, who do we raise from? And do we feel like we're bringing on the right stakeholders in our business? I think is really, really important.
Yeah, it sounds like it goes both ways. Just like when
It
you're
goes both ways. Yeah.
finding a new job, right? You're interviewing the company as much as they're interviewing you, or you should be at least.
Well, and by the way, you see this on executive teams as well, right? I mean, I think that's like one of the things I was actually talking to one of my advisors about, James Isaacs, exceptional human being. And we can link to some of the like the culture related like webinars and our masterclasses. That's helpful for your audience and community. But, he had scaled Ciara, which is a fund one portfolio partner, from, low 8 figures in revenue to, like 8x scale, right? Over a 6-year period. And was the first key executive we brought into the business outside of the founders, and was running probably at the peak a 200-person go-to-market org. It's massive. And, one of the things he's one of our kind of revenue advisors, CRO advisors. And one of the things he shared with one of our entrepreneurs that was powerful, because we were making our first key executive hire that wasn't a founder, and it wasn't like a VP, someone who kind of grew up in the ranks, but it was like external kind of C-suite person. And he made this comment that you need to hire not looking in your rearview mirror, but looking through your windshield, like looking forward, not looking backwards. And I thought it was an interesting kind of data point, right? And I think this goes back to like, maybe a provocative perspective that, that identity, your values will not change, but maybe your culture does evolve. And I think there's a distinction there between values and culture, right? And so I think that'll be interesting too for a lot of folks, is that as you grow your leadership team, you're going to find amazing human beings that may not fit the identity, may not align with your values, and certainly may not fit into your culture looking forward as to what you aspire to build. They may fit historically looking back, but maybe not forward. And importantly, I think as you build out your leadership team, I think those folks are going to bring in something amazing. And you should go through a cultures and value, like probably not a values audit, but like a cultural audit. And, are the things that we thought 12 or 18 months ago still true to our business today? So,
Doug, should we move into gratitude?
Yeah, I feel like I can listen to Sanket all day long.
You're teaching us the masterclass, and we would definitely share those masterclasses with our audience as well. So I'll send you a follow-up email.
I will tell you, I think one of the best jobs I have is working with some of the smartest minds in our space. And I feel like it's always a masterclass for me. Every time I jump on the phone with a Linda Chen or James Isaac or Herb Kunitz or John Hamm, I'm just blown away that you've taken now 30, 40, 50 years of hands-on experience doing iconic things. And I have the opportunity in like a 10-minute conversation to take away the TLDR, the synopsis. And so I really appreciate you calling that out. But yeah, so in terms of gratitude, so it's like, I'm going to take the approach of everyone eats. And I think you said 5 tacos. Is that right?
That's right. 5 tacos.
Awesome. So I would say the first one I give out to is my wife. I think she is, going back to what I kind of talked about earlier, like TLDR, she's an amazing human being, amazing, beautiful woman. I tell her she's the best teammate. And I always feel like when you're counting, or like whenever there's a tally of some kind, like you're always in a dangerous place in a relationship. If somebody's counting, like, what do? I did this many diaper change. I did that. I did this. I did that. You got to work out 30 minutes, blah, 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 blah. And I think acts of service is my love language with her. And I know that she loves to like sleep in. And I also know that she gives me the space to do what I want to like do what I need to do. And so I feel like we understand the roles that we can play, and those roles are dynamic at times. And sometimes it's she needs to be a daughter and be there to support her family through a challenging health situation. And we've got each other's back and nobody's keeping score. And so I think that's piece of it. We're awesome team members, which is amazing. And I would also say that like, she's an amazing, like, I feel like an amazing kind of coach in that, there is really, really good at helping me stay grounded in equilibrium. And there's a famous kind of quote from Novak Djokovic, huge tennis fan. And one of the things that he had talked about is he said, if you looked at pure skill set amongst the top ATP players, right, 10 to 100, like skill set wise, negligible. Like everybody's so freaking good. But he's like the difference of what makes, what I think has contributed to 24 grand slams or championships that he's won, which is at the top of the list of ever, in terms of success, is he's like my ability to get back after a bad shot, to get back to the equilibrium. I never get too high and never get too low. And so I credit my wife to be an amazing coach in terms of helping me stay grounded and having challenged me to be over the last decade. We've been together, which is kind of crazy. It's 10 years this March. To be in the best version of myself as a man, as a person, as a father, as a husband, as a son-in-law, et cetera. So that's my first taco. My second taco are my kids. I love my kids to
Do
death.
they get to share one? Do they each get one of the 5?
They get to share. They get to share. I'm gonna be. Like I said, everybody's gonna eat today. But I think as I'm sure that anybody who's got kids understands, like the biggest learning inflection point for me in my career was in understanding the importance or the gravity of different spheres in my life that were important to me. And that is like health, that is your family, that is your kids, that's your professional ambitions and commitments and things like that. And at times, like different spheres get held a little bit higher, but they all need to be cared for with the same level of love, attention, and time, and things like that. So I try to exercise. Like one is they've given me amazing purpose, right? They just like remind me, why do we do anything that we do, right? It's the most rewarding thing you could ever do. And from my perspective is being a parent. They also, you realize you're exhausted as all hell, like it's crazy, but at the same time, they are also your source of energy, right? They remind you like how to be present. They keep you grounded in the fundamentals, which is so amazing in life, right? Because you can't get too upset, like you realize that like, it's not life or death. And they've got short attention spans and, like they might have a tough moment and they just move on. And you kind of realize like, wow, like they get back to equilibrium really quickly. So I say my kids, like they're just source of purpose, but I feel like I'm constantly learning the fundamentals of life from them. Right. And they just kind of give you a great perspective in terms of what matters and what doesn't. Right. And the last 3 I'll give out to are, one is to our team. Like I think I work with an amazing team and they're exceptional human beings. And I love that, I love the way that I'm grateful for the impact and support they provide me with, how they help enable achievement of our mission. And I find, like, I remember my wife telling me she was at Gap for almost like a decade and a half, which is kind of crazy because if you think about the number of people that are in a job for 10, 15 years these days, it's not a large number.
So
I told her, I was
true.
like, you're like the unicorn of the corporate world. And one of the things that she talked about is my job as a manager and Gap does an amazing job. Like they have manager trainings like every week, every 2 weeks, maybe excessive, but they do a lot of investment in leadership. And one of the things she had told me about was, one of the measures of my success is how are my team members, how are my direct reports progressing? Are they getting promoted? Are they continuing to grow? Right. And if they get promoted, I've done my job. Right. There's like a business measurement of success. There's that piece of it. So I think for my team, it's like, if there's any perception that you can do things on your own, you are incredibly naive. Our success is I have a role to play. I try to be the best version of myself in that role, but that my success is enabled or our achievement is enabled by everybody showing up prepared to do their jobs. And our team is exceptional. And I think that they continue to be amazing stewards of our mission, of the culture. And, so they're awesome. The team is awesome. The last two I'll give out too is for our founders and our LPs. And I know it's probably intended to be individuals, but it's just hard to like call out specific people. But I would say like without these constituent groups, like we don't have a business. Like Peak Shan doesn't exist. If you don't have, capital for which you're responsible, being a great steward of, and you don't have an exceptional founders that you can back, I just have there's not much I'm doing. So incredibly grateful for that. I get to work with exceptional founders. We have the privilege of doing what we're doing because, LPs trust us um, to deliver great outcomes for them. And I think about like, this is one of the things that oftentimes gets overlooked. Like these are endowments, these are pension funds, these are family offices that have amazing missions, whether they're creating affordability, accessibility to higher education or education in general, whether they're serving underserved communities, whether they are going after cancer research or something else. Like it is the investments we're making, the success that we drive powers a lot of philanthropic, nonprofit, really noble causes. And I think, one, to have the trust of those stakeholders is amazing. And two is to be able to see the impact going back to purpose and identity and impact and things like that, to know that the success we have, the reason we fight in the trenches, we put in the effort, has that derivative benefit, I think to me is really inspiring. And I'm really grateful for our LPs who share some of that impact of what we are powering. And I share that with our entrepreneurs to know that like, it's not just about generating returns for economic success. Like there are different communities that benefit from that as well.
Sanket, those are very meaty tacos. And I don't know about you, Doug, but I'm like ready to like get my day started and start working.
Right.
Your energy
Yeah.
is awesome. So I just want to thank you
Of course, my pleasure.
for bringing it here, but I haven't feeling you bring it to everything you do every day.
I like to say you can't clap with one hand. So I appreciate the platform. I appreciate being able to feed off of your energy and enthusiasm. And I appreciate you creating an amazing space to have these conversations and to surface these perspectives. It's really inspiring. I love what you guys are doing. And I appreciate the opportunity just to be a part of it.
Thank you, Sanket.
Thanks for listening. One of the important things about building a team is gratitude. If you're looking to add more gratitude into your team, check out heytaco.com. We are clearly biased, but it really does work. Use the code AMAZINGTEAMS to receive 15% off for the first 3 months of your subscription.